Today, let's talk all about finding the right podcast topic and why it's crucial for you to be categorized right inside of iTunes and all the other podcatchers. Stick around, I got some tips for you. Hey there, podcaster. My name is Shannon Hernandez, radio broadcaster, podcaster, and podcast producer. And if this is your first time on this channel, my name also is The Shan Man. That's my nickname, my radio nickname. And thank you so much for joining me today on this video. Today we're talking all about how to find the right podcast topic so that you can be categorized right inside of iTunes. Now, this can go for a person who already has a podcast, or it can go for the brand new podcaster. But really, this video is all about helping give you ideas of how you can formulate the right topic or the general topic that you want to talk about for your podcast. And when I say general topic, I'm talking about how you can create that topic to be categorized right inside of iTunes. If you jump inside of iTunes, you probably have noticed that if you look for the certain categories, it'll be education, health, government and organizations, there'll be tech, there's all these categories, and you want to make sure that you're categorized right. But the problem that I see mostly with podcasters, especially people looking to start a brand new podcast, is that they don't know how to hone down on a particular niche. And if you look into iTunes, you can see those particular niches. Now let's take the health and wellness niche, or the health and wellness category inside of iTunes. If you look inside of iTunes under that particular category, you can see that there are a bunch of subcategories that go underneath there. I think there's holistic, there's self-help, and a couple of others that are in there. And those are hyper niche subcategories inside of iTunes. Now, when I talk to podcasters like I did today, I talked with two different podcasters. One wanted to start a podcast with barbecuing, and the other one wanted to talk about a podcast with self-development, personal development. Two completely opposite ends of the spectrum. However, they didn't know exactly what they could talk about. They were fearing that if they were too hyper niched or too hyper focused on a particular topic, that wouldn't really drive home the message, and that they felt they could talk about a number of things that are outside of what they talk about. Well, there's good and bad to that idea. What I try to coach people on saying is really focus on something that you are passionate about. Focus on something that you find is easy, because if it's easy, it's not work. It's easy for you. It's just a general philosophy that if you are really good at something, you're really good at discussing something that you know a lot about, and you have these skills that can draw out great information from potential podcast guests, it makes your job a lot easier. So when you talk about something that is your passion, then it makes your job easier. So let's say, for instance, that you have a podcast that's centered all around shoes. And this could be shoes that are fashionable, this could be shoes that are ratty, this could be sneakers, it could be anything that's in the realm of shoes. And your podcast is all about the fashion of shoes and maybe how shoes are made. Subtopics that you could talk about underneath your main topic is that, what is the fashion of shoes with the latest outfit? How can you invite maybe a designer to come in and talk about that particular outfit and how it matches with their particular shoes? It's really going to be up to you. Another example is, let's take the barbecue example. Let's say you want to talk about creating a podcast that centers all around just barbecue in the kitchen. Well, you could talk about how you can make particular rubs. You could talk about recipes. You could talk about the nutrition side of barbecue. You could talk about the drinks that pair well with barbecue. There are a number of topics you could talk about, but always relate them back to your main topic, which is barbecue, or the shoe instance, which is about shoes. Another example would be in the personal development field. Maybe you specifically focus on an area in personal development that has to relate strictly with mindset. Well, within mindset, you can have a number of subtopics that include exercise and nutrition, maybe psychology, maybe you could talk about medicine, things like that. But it all comes back to the idea of your main topic. Now, I know you're thinking to yourself, wow, that's just really putting me so niche, and it's not really gonna allow me to express myself. I understand that. But that's not how the rules are inside of iTunes and Stitcher and wherever else people are consuming podcasts. When they go into the iTunes store and they go to Apple Podcasts, it's like they're driving down the road. And when you drive down the road, you can see a burger place. They only specialize in burgers. Maybe they have other items on their menu that maybe are milkshakes, maybe they're salads, but they really specialize in burgers. So kind of look at it from that perspective. You see a burger joint further down the road that you go down, maybe you see a hiking shop. They specialize in nothing but hiking, but do they sell maybe shoes that can be used in hiking or maybe work shoes? Possibly. You never know. Though it's very similar to how you would really construct your own podcast. And when you set yourself up in a niche, it really sets you up as the authority within that niche. Now, you may not know a whole lot within that niche, but you're willing to learn from others. And you're setting yourself up for authority down the line when people are looking and searching for a good podcast that is within the niche or the category that they are searching. You have to remember that when you create your podcast, you're creating your podcast for your listeners, not for yourself. Now, this rule can be bent just a little bit, because if it's something that you're genuinely curious about, but you think that it will help your audience, that's how you should be positioning every podcast. Position it to where it helps your audience, because your audience are the ones that are going to determine whether or not they think your podcast is great. So if you're giving value out and you're sharing all this amazing value about how they can get the best shoe in winter and tips, that might be something that will help them come back. You always want them coming back. So provide service, provide value in your podcast, and they will continue to return by giving you the listen. I have another video where I talked with my good friend Addy Salcedo, and we talk about coming up with topics for a podcast. That can be found right here if you go ahead and click on the flyout menu, but it'll also be in the description down below if you want to check that out too. Now, I know there are hobbyists out there that say, well, I just want to start a basic podcast show where it's just, where it's like a talk show. I'm going to tell you this right now and advise you that you should still figure out a niche. My good friends Jimmy Wisman and Jimmy Petrogallo of the Small Town Murder podcast, they created a podcast that's centered just strictly around small town murders. So that should give you another idea as to why you should niche, because now those guys have millions of downloads because they did their work and they were hyper niche. And people are really into the true crime podcast these days. I mean, there's just no doubt about that. Now, if you're a business that's looking to start a podcast and you just don't know really where to start, but you're looking to invest in starting your podcast up, I've got a video over on the right-hand side that you can go ahead and check out, and it might get you started on everything you need to know with your podcast. In the meantime, go ahead, subscribe down below if you're on YouTube, and make sure when you subscribe, hit the little bell so that you can get notified whenever I put out a brand new video, and leave a thumbs up and share this video out with those who are looking for the help with podcasting. In the meantime, you guys have a good one. We'll see you next time.